We'll continue today with our series on the book of Daniel. Are you, yeah? Come on, we've been doing Daniel now for a couple of weeks, and if you've missed it, you can catch up online, but we call this series Unbowed in Babylon, because Daniel was a man, he was taken captive when he was a teenager, and he was actually brought to a place called Babylon, far away from his home, and he had to navigate life in the city that's very different than the context where he grew up in. And we thought, let's look into this, because that is what Berlin feels like for so many of us. We now have to navigate life in the city that has different values, different ways to go, and we want to learn how to do this well, like Daniel actually was flourishing and influencing Babylon. We want to learn how to do this. Today, the title of this series, this message today is Fireproof Faith. Fireproof Faith. And those of you who know the book of Daniel, you know which story is coming up today. We are in Daniel chapter 3. If you have your Bibles, open it up, or you can also follow along on the screen, or scan the QR code, or grab message notes from the desk, or whatever you want to do. But you can follow along as we read this whole chapter today, Daniel chapter 3. Well, it's quite a famous story. Actually, Daniel is not in it today. Today we'll learn about three of his friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Those are the names. Those are the Babylonian names. Actually, we met them last week already, and we got introduced by them with their Hebrew names. So they had different names, Hebrew names from home and new names from Babylon. Last week we learned already that these three friends were Daniel's housemates, Daniel's roommates. Okay, so they were bunking together, and their Hebrew names were Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Azariah. Close enough. You won't know. I just whatever you say, Dave. Those are the names, okay? So we're going to talk about these three today and how they were unwilling. They were unbowed. They were unwilling to play along the narcissistic game of this violent emperor called Nebuchadnezzar. And because of that, they were punished by fire. They were thrown into a fiery furnace. But somehow, miraculously, by God's intervention, they survived the fire and walked out of the fire without even having lost a single hair. Okay? So it's quite a story. It's quite a brutal story we're looking at today. And the emperor that we're talking about, we already met him last week as well. His name was Nebuchadnezzar. He was the emperor of Babylon. At that time, he was the mightiest emperor on the planet. And last week we heard that he had this nightmare. Remember this? Those of you who were here, he had this nightmare that troubled him, and he got all his advisors. He's like, hey, this is really bothering me. Can you help me interpret this dream? And nobody knew what the dream meant, but that God gave Daniel insight, and Daniel was able to interpret the king's dream. And we left it last week with Daniel's interpretation of the dream, but I want to show you how actually the story ended, because it actually says something about today. So let's look at how that story ended just real quick. Daniel chapter 2 still, and we are in verse 46. So just as Daniel finished interpreting the dream, it says, King Nebuchadnezzar, he threw himself down before Daniel, and he said, truly, your God is the greatest of gods, the Lord over kings, a revealer of mysteries, for you have been able to reveal this secret dream. Okay, so he's now on the floor. The king of Babylon is on the floor before Daniel, and we would call this worship. He's saying, your God is King of kings, Lord of lords, revealer of mystery. He's awesome, and he's so moved that he actually gives Daniel and his three friends new responsibilities. He promotes them with quite high-ranking jobs in his government, which is remarkable. These teenagers that were exiled from Judah are now in high positions because Daniel was able to interpret this one dream by the grace of God. And Nebuchadnezzar, he has this, as you see, he has this moment of confession where he's actually on his knees before God and he's recognizing God's greatness. So bear that in mind. And now we go to chapter 3, just a couple of verses later, and it seems like Nebuchadnezzar has forgotten everything. Okay? Let's look at verse 3. He has forgotten it all. Verse 1. King Nebuchadnezzar, he made a gold statue, 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide. Most scholars believe he made a statue of himself. and he set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Is it just me, or don't we go like, Nebuchadnezzar, come on, you were so close, you were almost a Christian. What happened to you, Nebuchadnezzar? You saw God in chapter 2, and now you see yourself in gold in chapter 3. You were praising God's greatness in chapter 2, and now you want people to praise you in chapter 3. Now, before we judge him too quickly, let's have a quick, honest moment. And can we just go there? And come on, this happens quickly, that we are coming together on a Sunday, and we are singing the songs, and we are praising God. Your name is the highest. Your la 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 la. Sure, yeah, I love Jesus. But then 24 hours later, not even, 12 hours later, some of you 12 minutes later, once you leave this place, okay, you're back thinking all about yourself. And you are living again, and your life is consumed by what is called the pride of life. And you are boasting with your accomplishments. And you are saying, hey, all eyes on me, please. I want to be seen. I want to be applauded. I want to be praised. I want to be envied even. Right? That happens quickly, that we actually worship God, but then it's actually just lip service. I think one of the lessons we can learn here from Nebuchadnezzar, this isn't really where we're going yet, but this is important. One of the lessons we can learn here from Nebuchadnezzar is you can get real low before God, but then still rise up full of yourself. You can get real low before God and still rise up full of yourself. And bowing before God means nothing if when you get back up, you are still on the throne of your heart. Write this down. Bowing before God means nothing if when you get back up, you are still sitting on the throne of your heart. What you've done was lip service. Okay? That's not true worship. Worship changes you. Worship dethrones you, and it thrones Jesus on the throne of your heart. Okay? The issue with Nebuchadnezzar wasn't that he didn't see God's greatness. He saw God's greatness, but he wanted to be seen as greater. And so he said, let's build a statue. 90 feet tall. That's taller than this building. 9 feet wide. I'm 6'7", so that's me and a little bit. Okay? Just wide. Imagine it. Okay. All right. Now, the question I want to ask today is how do we guard our hearts from that? How do we make sure we guard our worship so that our worship actually is authentic and not just lip service? How do we have a fireproof faith? And I think we can learn from the three guys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in this story. 3 things we can learn today. If you want to write them down, scan the QR code or write along on your notes so that you don't forget it. Let's keep reading in verse 4. So they have, on the plain of Dura, which is just a field outside of the city of Babylon, they have set up this massive statue. And people now are gathering from all over the country, from all over the empire, from all over Babylon. And then there's a herald who now shouts on behalf of the king. He says, people of all races and nations and languages. Why different languages and nations and races? Because that was Babylon's tactics. It wasn't just with the people of Judah, but from all over. Wherever they have invaded, they have migrated people, especially the elite, from all the different places to pull the plug on the invaded nations, and like, we're going to bring people and confuse everybody by just resettling people. That was their tactics. And so there were people in Babylon from all over the world. And he said, well, now listen to your king's command. When you hear the sound of the musical instruments, bow to the ground. Every knee must bow, he was saying, to worship King Nebuchadnezzar's gold statue. Anyone who refuses to obey will immediately be thrown into the blazing furnace. So, at the sound of the musical instruments, all the people, whatever the race or nation and languages, bowed, of course, nobody wants to be thrown into the fire, bowed to the ground and worshipped the gold statue. What's the first thing you can write down? What's the first thing that we need to do if we want to have a fireproof faith? Is you need to recognize the idols behind the pressure. Today. You need to recognize the idols that want you to bow down to them today. And I know some of you are looking at me like, what do you mean, what idols? We live in Berlin. We don't We have the TV tower, but nobody's bowing down to it. Like, come on, what are you talking about? Thankfully, we don't live in a time like this anymore. That was obviously so authoritarian, and like we are anti-authority. We have freedom, individual freedom now. There's no golden statues where we have to bow down to. Nobody in Berlin is telling us what to do or who to be or who to bow to. Really? If that's what you think, I really want, because you're a little, sorry, but you're a little bit naive. You need to look a little, it could be you're a little blind. You need to look a little bit closer. Babylon culture had idols. Berlin culture has ideologies. We have ideologies. Would you write this down? Ideologies are the idols of our time. Ideologies are the idols of our time. In Babylon, they worship golden statues. In Berlin, we worship golden opinions, golden ideas, opinions that sound good and feel right, but slowly and quietly move us away from what God's word says is true. Okay? The problem is, in Berlin, if you do not conform, if you do not affirm, if you do not celebrate, if you do not sing along, if you don't bow to our city's ideologies, very quickly you are canceled, you are fired, you are shunned, you are deplatformed in this city. This is a cancel culture. This is not as tolerant as we think it is. This is, by the way, this is so ironic. Can I say this? This is so ironic because Berlin thinks, oh, this city is so tolerant. This city is so free, and we're so open-minded in this city. But woe to you if you don't play along the game. That's when you realize, man, the furnace is hot in Berlin. Woe to you if you don't recycle properly. Woe to you if you don't cycle to work, but you take your car. Right? Woe to you if you don't eat vegan. Some of you are laughing, but that's a thing. That can become a thing for people. Woe to you if you don't check your privileges. Woe to you if you don't keep your faith private. Woe to you if you don't affirm the redefinitions of marriage. Woe to you if you don't celebrate every new gender identity. Woe to you if you don't use the right hashtag. Woe to you if you don't use the right pronouns. Woe to you if you don't wave the right flags. Woe to you if you don't protest on the right protest marches. Then you realize very quickly in Berlin, the furnace is hot. Judgment is coming. And people go, how dare you don't bow to our ideas? Am I stepping on your toes already? I'm a little bit, I know. I'm just trying to help you see, guys, open your eyes. The pressure to conform is just as real today as it was in Babylon. We may not have a literal furnace where people throw us into, but the heat is on. Come on, the heat is on in Berlin, and there's a pressure to conform. So we need discernment here. I want to say to you, if an ideology in your life has more authority than the Word of God, it has become an idol. If there's an ideology that you defend, that you live for, that breaks your heart when it's being threatened, that you get defensive about, if that ideology, you can have your ideologies, but if it has more authority than the Word of God, you've made it an idol in your life. Okay? When Nebuchadnezzar, when he built this golden statue, it says that people from all the different races, all the different languages were there. And he asked them to pay homage and bow to it. It's very interesting. Babylon, just like Berlin, was a very pluralistic society. People from all over, all walks of life, different worldviews. And so it's important. What Nebuchadnezzar was not doing, he was not telling people, hey, I need you to forsake your gods, your personal gods. But what he was saying is, I need you to prioritize your gods. People in Berlin do that as well. Like, yeah, you can believe whatever you want. You can be Muslim, you can be Christian, or whatever. Do your thing. But what Berliners are saying is the same thing as Nebuchadnezzar was saying. It was like, well, we need you to make or give Babylon a higher allegiance than to your personal God. We need you to give these ideas, these ideologies, a higher allegiance than your personal God. There's a priority here. And that's where Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came, and they were saying, yeah, that's never going to happen. That is never going to happen. We're not going to put God on number 2 and place you on number 1. This is never going to happen. This is important, guys. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they were willing to be good Babylonians until being good Babylonians meant being bad believers. And that's when they said, sorry, this is where we draw the line. We're out. Like I'm saying, by all means, let us be good citizens of Berlin. Let's be good Berliners. But if good Berliners means being bad Christians, that's where we need to draw the line. It's like, sorry, we're out. You still with me? Okay. There was a group called the Chaldeans, and they ratted them out to the king. So apparently Nebuchadnezzar didn't spot the 3 that didn't bow, but there were these Chaldeans, and they said, hey, Mr. King, there are 3 who didn't bow. Let's read this in verse 12. They were saying to the king, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, whom you have put in charge of the province of Babylon. Do you hear the hate? Do you hear the envy? It's like, oh, we want to be in charge. Look at that. They're not bowing. Let's go to the king. Hey, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, whom you have put in charge of the province of Babylon, pay no attention to you, your majesty. They refuse. If you have this piece of paper, would you circle it, the word refuse? They refuse to serve your gods, and they do not worship the gold statue you have set up. Let's look at this. Here's what Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, here's what they did not do. They did not go on a protest march against the golden statue. They didn't write big signs where they say, never Nebuchadnezzar. They didn't go on their Instagram with the hashtag, hey, hashtag not my statue. That's not what they did. Here's what they did. They simply refused. They refused. They practiced quiet, respectful, but firm non-participation. We're just not going to do it. I want to show you a picture. This is maybe a bit drastic now, but this is a picture from the 1936, where there was obviously quite an extreme ideology, much more extreme than what I just mentioned now, that ruled in this city and in our country. This picture is from 1936, and there's a guy named August Landmesser, and in this picture, he's circled. He refused to do the Hitler salute in the picture. Simply, he just refused. He didn't protest, no hashtags, no nothing. He just refused. It was quiet, but firm, non-participation. Apparently, this guy had a Jewish girlfriend. And so, even in 1936, he already knew where this was going to go. And so, he refused to participate. It's become now quite a famous photograph. Apparently, I looked it up this week. His girlfriend died in a Nazi concentration camp, and he was sent to the front lines where he was, at some point, 44, I think, he was missing in action. And so both of them didn't survive it, but they didn't participate in it. Now, that's obviously a bit extreme, but just to give it a visual. Now, for us today, it may be much less extreme, and it may look much more ordinary for us to just say, I'm not going to participate in this. So let me just give you some examples, and you do with it whatever you want to do with it. But maybe you're out with your mates, in the summer, Café am Neuensee, out for some drinks, and you with your friends, and one of your friends says, all right, who's ready for round number 4? Right? It's not where I'm going, but cool. So she's ready, but maybe you're also saying, round number 4, you know what, I think I'm good for now. I don't want to judge you guys, but I just prefer for myself, I like to go home sober-minded as much as possible. I like to not put anything in me that would compromise that. So that's why I draw the line. I'm just not going to participate. I'm still here, but I won't participate. Okay? Or let's say somebody sends you on your phone, somebody sends you a very trendy Instagram reel. By the way, I love you guys who just, whenever you see something funny, you send it to me. It's great. Keep it up, you know. So I'm not talking about you, but let's say one of your friends or somebody sends you something, an Instagram reel. But as you look at it, you actually realize, wow, it's actually quite degrading of a certain group of people. It's actually quite racist, this reel. I can see why people laugh at it, but this is not funny. And you refuse to like, comment, or share. You just don't participate. And if your friend asks you, did you like the reels? Like, actually, I know people from that people group, and I can see why you think this is funny, but this is actually really hurtful for them. I believe everybody's created in the image of God. I just don't, that's not my kind of humor. Refuse to participate, yeah? Or maybe you have an opportunity at your university or at your workplace to cheat to your advantage. And everybody says, why don't you do it? Everybody's doing it. Come on, just do it. But you say, no, actually, I want to look myself in the mirror still in the evening. I want to do things the honest way. So even if that means a worse grade or less pay, I want to do this the honest way. You don't participate. Or, let's go there. Let's say you have a new girlfriend, and it's been going really well, and you've been going out for several months already. And one of your friends then says, so you've been seeing this girl for a while now. How's it going? How is she? How is she in bed? Come on, tell me, how is she in bed? And then you say, well, actually, we decided we're going to wait until marriage. I know nobody else is doing this, but for us, sex is sacred, not casual, and so we're just not going to participate in what everybody else is doing. Or maybe you're by yourself and you're watching Netflix, and the show you're watching turns a little dark, sexualized, very violent, and you switch it off. Not because you're legalistic about it, but you're realizing, man, what I watch, it shapes my mind, it shapes my heart. I just don't want to put this in me. I'm not going to participate. You see what I'm trying to say? It could be the little things. You don't have to fight culture, but you don't have to follow culture either. You don't have to bark at culture, but you don't have to bow to it either. And even if you do that, if all you do is non-participation, I can guarantee you it will still trigger some people. But why don't you participate? Why don't you bow to this? We all do this. Why don't you? Let's see how Nebuchadnezzar was triggered. Let's keep reading the story. Are you still with me? I know it's got quiet in here. Okay, verse 13. Nebuchadnezzar, he flew into a rage. That's him now, okay? And he ordered that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought before him. When they were brought in, he said to them, is it true that you refuse to serve my gods or to worship the gold statue I've set up? If you refuse, come on, you'll be thrown into the blazing furnace. And then what? And then what are you going to do? And then what God will be able to rescue you from my power? Well, I'm glad you asked, Nebuchadnezzar, because you're about to find out what God is going to rescue us. Now, here's the reply from Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They said, oh, Nebuchadnezzar, look at this. We do not need to defend ourselves before you. Come on, that's confidence right here. We don't owe you an answer, king. We don't need to defend ourselves before you. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God whom we serve, he is mighty to save. That's, I think, what they were singing. He's mighty to save. The God whom we serve is able to serve us. He will rescue, look at this, he will rescue us from your power, your majesty. But even if he does not, we want to make it clear to you that we will never serve your gods or worship that gold statue you've set up. The second thing you need to fireproof your faith is refuse to flinch when the heat is on. Refuse to flinch when the heat is on. And I love this, guys. I hope you can see this. There's a depth here with these three guys. They were willing to worship God on an even if. Did you see that? They were saying, they looked Nebuchadnezzar straight in the face, and they were saying, look, we already made up our minds. You can turn the heat on. we're not going to flinch. Our God can deliver us. And even if He does not, we will still worship Him. Guys, this is huge. Some of you, that's all you need to hear today. God can heal the cancer. But even if He does not, we'll still worship Him. God can heal your broken relationship. But even if He does not, we will still worship Him. God can fix your finances, help you get out of your debt. But even if He does not, we will still worship Him. God can bring your prodigal son or daughter back home and bring the family back together. But even if He does not, we will still worship Him. Am I talking to somebody already? God can give us a baby. But even if He does not, we will still worship Him. God can cure my depression, but even if He does not, we will still worship Him. God can get me into that university program, but even if He does not, I will still worship Him. And guys, can we just be honest? I don't know why God doesn't always answer the things that we pray for together, for each other. I wish I would know. I have just as much questions. As a pastor, I have the same questions that you have. Why does He sometimes say yes? And why does He sometimes say no? Well, I know, regardless of His answer, He's good. He's always good. And even when life is bitter sometimes, I will never be able to forget the taste of His kindness, the taste of His grace. You cannot take this away from my taste bud. Even when life tastes bitter, that you can't take away. And so I will worship Him. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they were saying with such confidence, our God can deliver us. But we can't. He can do anything, but we can't make Him do anything. He is still the sovereign God. He's in control. And our lives are in His hands. And that's a good place to be in. That's the best place to be in. We don't want to be anywhere else. We're going to stay with God regardless of what happens around us. Isn't that such a helpful, inspiring, but also challenging perspective on what we go through? They refused to flinch when the heat was on. They were saying to Nebuchadnezzar, you can take our lives, but even if you take our lives, you cannot take God away from us. And now Nebuchadnezzar is getting even angrier. Verse 19, Nebuchadnezzar was so furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that his face became distorted with rage. Just look straight to your neighbor right now and show him that face that Nebuchadnezzar might be. Come on, do it. Distorted with face. No, it was more than that. It was more like your eyes have to go down here. Your mouth goes up like, rah! Yes? Show me. No, I don't believe it. Come on. Come on. I think it was whatever. Are you guys doing it at home in the live stream? Do it to your screen. You know. That's him. So, distorted with rage. Okay, bring it back. Okay. He commanded now that the furnace be heated 7 times hotter than usual. And then he ordered some of the strongest men of his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the blazing furnace. So they tied them up and threw them into the furnace, fully dressed in their pants, turbans, robes, and other garments, which means they were flammable. And because the king in his anger had demanded such a hot fire in the furnace, the flames killed the soldiers as they threw the 3 men in. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, securely tied, fell into the roaring flames. But suddenly, everybody say suddenly. Suddenly Nebuchadnezzar jumped up in amazement and exclaimed to his advisors, "Didn't we tie up 3 men and throw them into the furnace? "Yes, your majesty, we certainly did," they replied. "Well, look," Nebuchadnezzar shouted, "I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the 4th looks like a son of the gods." What Nebuchadnezzar didn't know, but what we know because we know the end of this book, this wasn't just any son of any god. It was the Son of God who showed up with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace. That's powerful. Now, theologians call this a Christophany. Christophany is a pre-incarnate appearance of Jesus Christ in the Old Testament. Okay? You think Jesus showed up in this book in Bethlehem in the manger? No, he was there already a few times before. Whenever there's a few stories in the Old Testament where it says God was there in human form. What is God in human form? It's Jesus. Abraham, different places, also here. Who's the 4th one in the fire? It's Jesus. Now, this is not in the story. I just imagine this, that Father, Son, Holy Spirit, triune God, on the throne from everlasting, and they're watching from heaven what's happening on the plain of Dura outside the city of Babylon in that moment. And they're like, "Oh, look, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They believe in us. They trust in us. They refuse to flinch. It's amazing." And then maybe they look at each. I'm just interpreting now. Maybe they look at each. Maybe we should send somebody down to them. Gabriel, maybe you should go down. You're the angel who always seems to go down. And maybe then Jesus got. I was like, no, I'm going to go down. I want to go down, be with them. That's just me. But Nebuchadnezzar says, "Didn't we throw in 3? Why do I see a 4th one in the fire?" There is a Son of God in the fire. That's what he says. And can you see this? This is out of the mouth of Nebuchadnezzar, a proclamation of what we call the gospel. The Son of God in the fire. That is gospel, guys. The gospel is good news. The gospel is the heart of God. The gospel is what makes Christianity different to all the other religions. Now, I want to say this respectfully, but let me tell you the difference between gospel Christianity and all of the other religions. I know I'm generalizing, but here's what other religions are telling you to do. You need to do this to climb out of the fire. Here's what you need to do to build yourself a ladder, to be a good person, to impress God, to follow the rules, to live by the laws, to pray the right prayers, to memorize this, to do all the rituals. And if you do it right, maybe you can help yourself climb out of the fire of hell. And maybe once you climb out, God is merciful and he will actually not push you back in. The gospel says there's no way you can ever save yourself. The gospel says here is what God has done to rescue you. Here's what God has done to come for your help. God came into your fire. He is not apathetic. He is not distant. He is not looking away. He gets involved and he suffers for us. He suffers with us and he comes close and Jesus was willing to be bound to a cross. And on the cross, he went through the furnace of our sin so that we can go free. Amen? That's gospel. There's a Son of God in the fire. You see how that is a foreshadow of what Jesus would do? I know, I need to wrap up. Okay, thank you for the... Number 3, here's what you need to do to have a fireproof faith. Number 3, realize that you are never alone. Realize that you are never alone. If you are going through a tough time right now, I need you to know this. I want you to know this, that God's eyes are on you and he sees you and he wants to meet you in the fire. You are not out of sight. You are not out of reach. He comes to meet you in the fire and he says, I'm right here behind you. I'm right here with you. Never will I leave you. Never will I forsake you. Guys, the Christian life is not problem-free. It is promise-filled. Okay? We know this is not problem-free. Some Christians tell you, well, if you become a Christian, you will never have problems again. Well, we can all give testimony. That's not true. The Christian life is not problem-free, but it is promise-filled. What is one of the promises? Isaiah 43, where God says, even if you walk through the fire, I will be with you, and the fire will not harm you. That is their story, actually. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. We walked through the fire. God was with us. We were not harmed. Okay? They were walking in the fire, unbowed, unbound, and unburned. unbowed, unbound, unburned, because God protected them. Now, if it were me, I would say, yo, Jesus, I'm glad you're here. Welcome to the party. But couldn't we throw this party outside of the furnace? Do you mind turning the flames down at least a little bit? It was 7 times hotter. Maybe bring it down to 2 again. Why do we have to do this in here? And I think if Daniel were here, he would say, well, that's the whole point of this book, the book of Daniel. This story is supposed to teach us something. It's supposed to teach us that the point is not always, the goal is not always for us to get out of the fire, but it's for us to get God in the fire. You hear me? It's not to get out of the fire, but for us to get God in the fire. In other words, here's what that means. Trusting in God will not always keep you from experiencing bad things in life. Trusting in God will keep you as you experience bad things in life. You see the difference? Let me say this again. Trusting in God will not always keep you from experiencing bad things in life. But trusting in God will always keep you as you experience bad things in life. He keeps you. He holds you. He protects you. He's with you. And let's look now in the last few verses at what happens as they walk back out of the furnace. Nebuchadnezzar, as he saw them, there's a fourth one. He came as close as he could to the door of the flaming furnace. And I'm almost done. Trust me. It's the last verse. Come on. So he came as close as he could to the door of the flaming furnace, and he shouted, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God. Say what? Now he's like, oh yeah, he's the greatest again. Build a statue. He was like, what God's going to save you from me? Oh man, he was not sure who he was. But okay, so servants of the Most High God, come out, come here. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego stepped out of the fire. Then the high officers, officials, governors, and advisors crowded around them and saw that the fire had not touched them. Not a hair on their heads was singed, and their clothing was not scorched. They didn't even smell like smoke. Isn't that amazing? God proved his power to Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians, not by anything that they said when they walked out of the furnace, but by how they smelled. By how they smelled. It's like these advisors, the governors, the officials, they looked at them as like, you were in the fire, but you walk out of it with faith. You don't even look like what you've been through. How come you don't smell like what you've been through? And Nebuchadnezzar, I imagine he had a beard. He was doing this. He was saying, there's something about the people of Judah that doesn't seem right. There's something about them that is off. We are the greatest empire on the planet. They are a minority among us. They are in exile. But somehow we can't touch them. Somehow we can't get to them. What is it about them? It's as if something surrounds them. It's as if someone defends them. They must have a God on their side who is devoted to them. And you see, guys, maybe that is a perspective we need to adapt when we go through pain and difficulties and fires in our lives. For us to say, maybe I'm going through what I'm going through, so that the people in my life, my friends, my co-workers, my family members, my roommates, those who see me, those who watch me, and they are watching, not just when you do well, but they are watching when you go through difficulties, and they know you're a person of faith, and they're like, well, how are you going to handle that now? For us to say, maybe I'm going through what I'm going through, so that the people in my life can watch what's happening in my life. And then when God shows up in the fire, and he walks with me in the fire, they go, how come you don't smell like what you've been through? How come you don't look like what you've been through? You're not supposed to look like this. You're not supposed to smell like this. Who is this God that is with you? Who is this Jesus that you trust in? If he can do that for you, maybe he can do that for me too. Now I have one more story. Can I? Sure. What are you going to do? You know I'm going to share anyways. Let me share this story. This is not my story. It didn't happen to me. I have a colleague who is a pastor and also a chaplain in a hospital. So a chaplain is somebody who goes to hospitals or different places and he prays with people in their pain. And so he goes to the hospitals to just walk with people as they face sickness, and sometimes he walks with them as they face death. And so he goes every week to the hospital, and he has a bit of a rule. He only goes into the rooms where he's invited in. So he doesn't force himself on anybody, but whenever somebody says, "Can you pray with me?" he just goes and prays with people. And he said he's doing this every week. And he says that there was this one guy in a hospital bed. He'd never invited him in, but the door was always open. And whenever he walked past the room, the guy in the bed just always showed him the finger as he walked past. I didn't do it now, you know. It was like, the priest, you know. One day, as he was walking past, there was no finger, but just a voice like, "Yo, priest, come here." So he went in. And the guy in the bed, he said, so what do you do here? I see you every week. What do you do here? You're not a doctor. What do you do here? And then he said real quick, actually he sat down with him. And he said, "Well, do you want to know? I'll tell you briefly." I pray with people. Sometimes faith can help people to walk through pain. And I want to remind people that Jesus is our ever-present help in times of trouble and that his presence removes fear. And I want to just pray with them and comfort them and walk alongside them. And he says, "Well, can I pray to this Jesus?" Of course you can pray to this Jesus. "How do I pray?" And he said, "Well, you pray to Jesus. Just imagine you're talking to your father." And he says, "I never knew my father." And he says, "Oh, I'm sorry. Can I still pray, though, even though I never knew my father?" "Yeah, you can still pray." So how do I pray? And the guy, the chaplain, he got up and he took the chair that he was sitting on and put it right next to the bed. Imagine here's the bed. And he got up from the chair and there was an empty chair. And he said, just imagine with me, Jesus is sitting on this chair right now. And he's not talking to you, he's not preaching to you. He's just giving you his attention, and he loves you. What would you say? He loves you, he's listening. What would you say? And the guy says, "Well, honestly, I would tell him that I'm really scared." And the chaplain says, I can see why. You can tell him that. You can tell him that you're scared. What else? I would probably tell him that I have effed up my life. Okay, well, that is honest. You can tell him that too. You can tell him that too. Anything else? And the guy, "I'll think of something." "You can go." And the chaplain said, "Okay, I'll talk to him." He left the chair and he just walked out. All right, fast forward. The next week, he comes back to the hospital. He walked past the different rooms, and he thought, maybe he can talk to the guy again who was always being so rude. And he comes to the room, and he sees the bed is empty. And then he goes to the nurses, like, "Hey, have you moved him? Is he in another ward? Where is he?" And they actually say, "Well, actually, 2 days after you've been there with him, he passed away." And the guy said, "Oh, that's a shame. I just felt like I got to talk to him." And then he just wanted to go on, but the nurse said, actually, let us tell you, the last couple of days of his life, he was all bouncy on his bed. And he was all telling us about how Jesus is sitting next to him on this chair. And if they want to talk to him, they can just talk to the chair if they want to. And the chaplain goes like, "Well, that's amazing, actually. Maybe it helped him, in his last hours." And then as the chaplain wanted to go, the nurse said, "Don't go yet. I don't know if this is important, but can we tell you how we found him in the morning when he died?" He had actually, he wasn't lying in bed. He had sat up on his bed, and he had pulled up the chair to the side of his bed. And he had wrapped up his arms around the chair with his chest on the surface. And that's how he died. And that's where the chaplain, obviously, he lost it. Because it's like, he got it. In his final days, he finally got it. This rude man who has effed up his life, he got it. He understood what, for some of For some of us, it takes us our entire lives to understand this. That when we trust in Jesus, He keeps us, not from stuff, but He keeps us as we face stuff in life, and He even keeps us as we face death itself. And so this man, I believe, he died in the arms of Jesus. I know some of you are going through a fire right now. Maybe not the fire of death, but still the heat is on in your life. And you're wondering, man, how did I get here? Maybe you caused the fire yourself. Maybe others have kicked you into it. Maybe it's just life dealing you a set of cards. It's like, how did I deserve this? How do I get out of this? I hope you can be encouraged from these stories, that what Jesus wants to say to you, I believe today, is you don't have to walk this alone. My face is towards you. I want to be with you. I want to keep you as. And we'll walk out of this together. And you won't even smell like it. You'll be okay. I'll keep you. You'll be okay. We're going to sing, the band can come up. We're going to sing a closing song. If there's a fire that you are walking through right now, I want to encourage you, as we sing this song, pray and ask Jesus to come and meet you in the fire as He's promised. And if you don't know how to pray, maybe there's a person sitting next to you who's willing to pray with you. But there's also people now over there by the cross who are part of our prayer team. You can just walk up to them. No shame involved. You can just tell them if you want to. You can tell them details, or if you don't want to go there, you can just ask them, can you ask Jesus to come meet me in my fire in my life right now? And they are so happy to pray for you and with you. Shall we all stand together? And then let's respond to what we heard with the song that we're going to sing. Amen.